September
September
1992. I get to Kentucky. They hold another meeting. I am the official director, executive director of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, making me the third individual to hold that office since it was created in 1960. And I'm the first African American woman. There was Galen Martin, who had served for 27 years. Then there was an African American male who served about 2 years before I came on board, and me. And the interesting piece is Galen and I still today, 9/11/2014, are the longest serving, he for 27, me for 12. So I came in to an organization, and my first charge from the commission body was, you need to clear up and clean up this thing. 3 things was going on. One, they didn't have quorums to do business as a commission body and couldn't understand what was going on. And in Kentucky, the commission body must approve every action taken by the staff before it is official. So every case that we investigated needed final approval by the commission. Every settlement needed final approval by the commission. Every hearing had to be heard, and a decision had to be written by the commission. So they couldn't get a quorum for the commission body itself until they elected me. The whole body was there that day because there was a little bit of controversy. And then the second piece was there was controversy around some decisions that had been written and whether or not it followed appropriate procedures. So that needed to be cleaned up. And then the other piece was there was a large number of cases that were aging. And by aging, the cases were 600, 700, 800, 900 days old. Even though there had been a lot of hearings in Kentucky, and Kentucky had a great reputation nationally as being a progressive human rights commission. And the commission had been active in developing programs and recommending and getting policy approved for the state of Kentucky.
Explain the core mission of the, just quickly, the core mission of the commission. Its mission was to do?
Its mission was to enforce the Kentucky Civil Rights Act, responsible for ensuring that there was access to equal opportunity in employment, housing, and public accommodations. It was to do research about issues related to race and other issues and make recommendations to policy-making bodies, particularly the legislature, to improve that to the executive branch and the legislative branch, I think is what it said. And it was to work with community to enhance communities across Kentucky to ensure that there was equal opportunity for all citizens. And that's sort of a broad kind of a piece, but that's really what we were doing. Our core work was receiving and investigating complaints of discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodation.
And can you sample some of those early cases that you remember?
I remember a case, this is an Eastern Kentucky case, and it was in London, Kentucky. It involved a woman who had gone to work, and they had a rule that said you couldn't bring alcohol on. And she worked for a mining company. I can't remember the mining company. It's a real public, and it was a public hearing, a public case. Took the case, and the individuals, it was found that the company had discriminated against her because I think it was 4 or 5 individuals got in her car, went to lunch, and somebody, not her, bought some beer and put it in the trunk of the car. Remember this rule. The rule was you can't discriminate. The rule was you can't bring beer onto the premises of this mining company. She comes back into the premises. Somebody tells that she's got beer in the trunk. So good news is the company looked like it was doing the right thing. It fired everybody, including her. The bad news is it hired all the men back who was in the car with her and didn't hire her. She filed a complaint with us. We looked at it. It took us, and this was before I got here, but we ended up selling it. It took the commission probably about a month to do that case and determine that discrimination existed, to issue a letter of finding to the company, and to demand that they pay her $2,500 and re-employ her. $2,500. Because she had only been off the job for a little less than maybe 2 months, her salary, and I think we gave E&H damages and they were real low, and that's embarrassment and humiliation, which is similar to punitive damages, and it was $2,500. Plus, I don't think we had anything else. I think it was $2,500. Well, the company decided they weren't gonna pay. So they took us to court, and they challenged the commission and its authority and its law, and said the law was not consistent. The law didn't give them the authority to do that. So in essence, we got hung up in a case about policy and procedure, and the law itself, which took probably another year. So this case is languishing. Well, the commission finally wins that issue, and the court affirms that the authority that they thought they had was in fact accurate. So they review the case again, and then they say there's an additional amount because now it's been over a year and a half. So they said, okay, company, you're still guilty. You need to do this. Well, the company then, under law, under the Kentucky Civil Rights Act, had the right to appeal the decision, and they appealed it to every judge they could find. And it got overturned. Well, I came in 1992. This case is about 5 or 6 years old, and it was one of the first cases I was involved in that got settled. Finally, we talked to the company that said, look, you all have wasted all this time. And by the way, this company had some of the best lawyers. They had lawyers in Atlanta, they had lawyers in Louisville, they had lawyers in Lexington. They had a real cadre of lawyers. The other thing is they blackballed this woman throughout this community. This is London, Kentucky. She was known as the person who filed this complaint. She was known as the person who was bothering the mining company, and it was the biggest employer in London. So we finally talked with them, and they agreed to settle the case. They agreed to pay her $150,000. They agreed to do some other things in the community. This is all around a sex discrimination claim and a retaliation claim, because we ended up putting retaliation on the claim. So we were able to go to London one day with cameras blasting and give her a check for $150,000. Well, they sent one of their young junior lawyers to make sure, to really, this is the company, to see what we were doing. So that was interesting. So that was one case. And the woman was smiling, and it's wonderful. And if you go back into our old archives, you'll find out she's on the front of one of our newsletters. Another case involved a young woman in Paducah, Kentucky. She worked for a fast food company. She had a young son, and she was looking for and I can't remember her name. This was a settled case. All of this is public knowledge. You know, we used to issue press releases and send it over to you all. And you used to have a reporter from the Courier that covered every meeting. I know, you think you used to be one of them, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Covered some.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, this was a young lady, and so she called this realtor and says, I'm looking for an apartment. You have one available. I'd like to see it. Goes over on her lunch hour. They said, oh, the apartment's just rented. Sorry. If we have another one, we'll call you. She says, okay. So she walks out and she says, and went back to her job and told her coworkers, some of whom were white, you know what, I think that apartment's still available. I think they just didn't want me living there because I'm black. So one of her coworkers said, let me call and see. So they did their own testing program. Kentucky had developed testing procedures and was known for a group that did testing in housing to ensure fair housing for everyone. So they called. And so the person who answered the phone says, hello, I'm so-and-so, so-and-so. And they said, I'm looking for an apartment. I understand you have one available. This is right after they tell this young black woman it's not available. He said, oh yeah, we still have that apartment. When you want to come see it? So that person goes to see it. Then another coworker decides to call. That coworker goes to see it. Another friend of theirs, not a coworker, calls, all white, all shown the apartment after her. So she files a complaint with the Paducah Human Rights Commission, who didn't have the authority to do investigations. They sent it to us. We ended up giving that young lady a check for $15,000, blaring, big check, again, TV cameras, so that was a lot of fun. Another case, also an old case, involved pipe fitters in Ashland, Kentucky, and it was against, and it was the pipe fitters union that it was against. It was not Ashland Oil or anything else. The pipe fitters union supplied pipe fitters and others to Ashland Oil and any of the other surrounding industries, but they had a system, and your name went on a list as to when you were referred. 2 African-American males were on the list. They did not get referred, so they said the pipe fitters union was discriminating against them. That case lasted 10 years. By the time it settled, it's probably about 1996, 97, and I'm the director. We ended up getting the case through the commission. We wrote the opinion, and they settled, and they ended up giving the two men a sum of money, which I can't remember, but the important part was they changed the procedures to how they did it, and they were discriminating against that, and so that went into place, so we were able to do that. And then the final case involves Walmart, my favorite client of all times when I was here. Now the good news about Kentucky is I can call names because it's public knowledge. The Walmart case was down in Russellville, Kentucky, Logan County. A couple were dating. Walmart had a non-fraternization policy, meaning nobody could date other people who work for the company. And I'm not sure, but it still might be in place today. But the interesting piece was everybody else was dating everybody else, and they all worked for the same company. Walmart. The couple who came to us were an interracial couple, an African-American male and a white female. And they both worked at Walmart, and they dated, and people did not like that. And this is in the mid to late. This is also another old case. And again, quick investigation, quick finding, go to Walmart and says you need to reinstate them, pay them. And it was pittance of money. It was literally no money compared, their hourly wage and everything at Walmart. So they're saying, no, we didn't do anything wrong. Now, when we looked at it, and the records show that so-and-so, who was this person at Walmart was dating this person at Walmart, and all in the same store. So it's not like they were dating somebody in Bowling Green. This is all in this one store. That case lasted a long time, and we ended up with a hearing and with a direct award. And we ended up giving both of those persons money at the end. I think it was somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000 was split between the two people. At this time, they had married and then divorced. So when we get to them with money, they're now a divorced couple. At the time this started, they were just dating. So they dating, married, now they're divorced. So we gave them different checks, that kind of thing. But it was sort of an interesting case. And what we found out about that, which is real interesting, and that is some of the most powerful people in America in small communities is whoever runs the largest employer. Well, sometimes guess who the largest employer is in a lot of these communities? Walmart. So, and this was before the super Walmart stores. So the super Walmart stores, I think, end up adding some more. So those are just a sampling of the cases that we saw. We saw some disability cases where they were refusing to let service animals in. One was here in Louisville, and one was in another community where, in fact, we went in to say, look, you're violating the law. It's against the law. That's what happened. So we saw service animal issues being clarified for individuals across the state, policies being changed. We did some work with respect to a variety of other issues. We saw religious issues. We had one case involving the Wiccan religion, where somebody refused to make a cake or provide a service. This was a public accommodation case because they said they didn't believe in this Wiccan witches religion kind of piece or whatever. Anyway, long story short, they ended up having to make the cake for the witches.
Was there ever, Beverly, as you talk about some of these cases, was there ever one that got away from you that haunts you? Is there any haunting cases that somebody filed and you couldn't get it done?
One of them really involved a pregnancy case of an unmarried female involving a religious institution, and we really did think that was discrimination, where it said that the beliefs of the religious body trumped the discrimination, even though we thought they were an employer under the law. And as a result, they had employed lay individuals to do work and I can't remember whether it was a school, a daycare, whatever. So in essence, we said this was not the church. This was a daycare center, or this was a school, and they had violated the Kentucky Civil Rights Act. That one got away, I think, because I believe that was discrimination, because I think it was an employer issue, not the church issue, if you get it. That was the one I think that was there. There were some other issues that came about where we thought individuals should file, and they never filed, and we did not have enough knowledge to file. Under the Kentucky Civil Rights Act, we did do some commissioner-initiated charges, because if we had enough details and information, we could charge on behalf of the commission body, and that exists across the country. So that was one thing we were able to do, and so that was it. Again, Kentucky's reputation nationally was an outstanding, stellar reputation. I mean, I truly felt that this was my dream job, and I was truly blessed to have it, because people were going, "How'd you get that job?" I really wanted that job. And I was a non-lawyer and still am. And so along the way, I surrounded myself with people, or got to know people who were doing things in other states. I got involved with the National Association of Human Rights Workers, called NARO. And then I got involved with IORA, the International Association of Official Human Rights Agencies. I served on both boards. I actually became the president of IORA and was president for 2 successive terms in the late 90s into early 2000. And so as a result, I was always able to call on people to do things. We had contracts with HUD when I came on board, subsequently got a contract with the EEOC to dual process cases. So we looked at things. We trained our staff. I trained all of our commissioners, and I was trained as well to be administrative law judges because we had a change. So we did a lot of innovative kind of things internally, and we used to train folks on how to do everything. So all of those aged cases that were 600, 700, 800, 900 days old, within about 3 to 5 years, we had reduced the average age of cases in employment to right around 300 days, which is real significant. So that means that nothing was that old, and the new cases we were getting out quite easily. Housing cases, we always had small numbers, and it's the most underreported discrimination in the country. When I was here, we'd probably see 60 or 70 housing cases. However, they have significant impact because it opens the doors in communities like nothing else. That housing is one of those barriers to success. If you don't have housing in decent neighborhoods, you do not go to work, or if you do, you might go late. There are other factors involved, so we worked on those. So we had cases, but we were also doing those quite well. We were doing training, we were doing housing testing, we were doing a lot of things that would help people understand what was going on in housing. And then we had a research arm. We always looked at minorities and women in state government, what was happening, who was hiring who, those kind of things. As a result, I sat on a committee on equal opportunity at the State Higher Ed Commission. We worked with the school boards and things on things. We also worked with the governor's minority managers program. I was on an advisory committee for then Governor Paul Patton and others, and we really worked with human resources in the governor's office to make sure that we didn't have barriers for people to get jobs in state government. And then once in state government, there weren't any barriers for them to move up to positions of authority. At the same time, there was a women's managers program, and then I think they've all, I don't know if they still exist, they might, but they were doing that. We worked with what was the National Diversity Institute or Association, which was housed at Kentucky State University on behalf of the state government. So I was then plucked around and doing all of these things. In addition to doing the commission's work, I was serving on major policy bodies in Kentucky, and I think that is really the essence of the Kentucky Commission, was its research arm. It had early on looked at issues with respect to higher education, with respect to education, employment in state government, and other things. So as a result, some of the research led to particular positions or policies in other parts of state government being implemented as a result of that.